Hello friends, today we're going to be talking about the conjunction of Mercury and Jupiter in the sign of Leo, where this conjunction will perfect on August 16th at 10 degrees of Leo. So we're going to talk about what the aim of this conjunction is, but I'm also going to be looking at the trine that it will be making to Saturn in the sign of Aries, as well as a sextile to Venus in the sign of Libra. So there's a complex and a profound dialogue happening in this moment. And I also want us to remember this is happening 4 days after the eclipse. So we're still in the eclipse season, and this dialogue's occurring in that context, which is also important. And I would say this transit is trying to make us aware of what we understand intellectually, cerebrally, on the realm of thinking, versus the kind of knowing that comes from our hearts. And when we think about it, both Mercury and Jupiter represent a form of knowing, but different kinds of knowing. For instance, Mercury is the intellect. That's what it symbolizes. So it's talking about the way we observe things, differentiate, name things, take pieces of information and connect them together. Mercury is the planet that's giving us the capacity to formulate thoughts. And eventually we take those thoughts and give it a language to express what it is we're feeling, seeing, and how we're experiencing the world. But Jupiter is always doing something larger. Jupiter takes the information of Mercury, and Jupiter wants to know, well, what does all of this mean? So yeah, you have all these bits and pieces of information. Well, what's the underlying principle that can hold all of it together, make it coherent, and give it the depth to come to an ontological understanding of something? So Jupiter is concerned with the totality of what we know. So when Mercury comes with Jupiter, the intellect has to become more coherent. Our information has to become our understanding. And eventually our understanding has to mature to our knowledge. And if you have a very mature Jupiter, then that knowledge has to become our wisdom. And we got to remember, one of the things that's making this conjunction very profound is that it's happening in the sign of Leo. And Leo is the sign of the sun. And the sun is the center, is the heart. It represents something about our consciousness, the organizing principle that comes to be an expression of a self. The sign of Leo is saying something about the emanating principle from that center, where something essential within us can finally have an authentic expression, an expression that's sovereign. So having this conjunction in the sign of Leo is not just about having depth of understanding, but also about how do I now come to embody what it is that I know within my heart, so that can be an emanation of myself externally. In a sense, it wants us to live what we know, not just know what we know. So this conjunction comes to be about us understanding our patterns, the source of those patterns. Where are they coming from? Are they coming from our socializations, our habits, the relationships that we've been in for years on end? Factors that have contributed to the formulation of the self that might not be authentic. And having Mercury here, the planet that can decipher and decode, Mercury can start doing this. And with Jupiter here, we can start to build a new philosophy around it. And being in the sign of Leo and having the sun here in the same sign in this moment, all of this wants to reach the heart. There's something about the self that wants a confirmation of, am I living myself in this life? Am I the embodiment, what I actually know? So the aim of this conjunction is to help us understand what it means to live our truth. And this is going to be the basis of our discussion for this video. And before getting into the layers of it, I just want to let you know that the following videos I'm working on, one is about Mars and the sign of Cancer, where Mars is debilitated. But I'm going to hold that video until Mars comes closer to that square aspect to Saturn. And this is an important transit because Mars is the ruler of Aries, where Saturn's debilitated. And in that video, I'll talk about the nature of Mars in the sign of Cancer as well. I will also be talking about Venus in Libra, and this is important because Venus is going to make it all the way to Scorpio, station retrograde, and back to Libra. So this transit of Venus is important, and I'll be talking about that as well as the aspects that it'll be making. And if you want to catch all of those videos and more, please do remember to subscribe. Press that notification bell so YouTube notifies you when those videos are released. And I do have a confession. Hours before Mars entered into the sign of Cancer, I had a massive back spasm, the second one, right under my scapula. So I'm going to try to get through this video to the best of my ability. The original script is super long, but I'm going to try to convey what this transit is about. And if I make funny faces, please do excuse me. Now that I got my confession out of the way, let's go through the first layer of this video. And I want us to actually pay attention to this. When Jupiter and Mercury meet, the sun is in the sign of Leo, in its own sign. And when we have Mercury come close to the sign, the planet of communication, our intellect gets this inclination to start self-defining itself. It wants to describe itself. And because of this right now, we should pay attention to the stories that we're telling ourselves, because the Mercury is recollecting. It's thinking about all the things that have happened to us that made us to the person that we are today. Because Mercury will organize our experiences and create a narrative out of it. This is what we should be paying attention to. What kind of stories is our intellect, our thinking process, narrating about ourselves? And we have to remember that Mercury is a mere interpreter. So Mercury will just narrate what it has experienced. It's not necessarily expressing that which is the sun, the organizing principle. And I think this distinction is very important, because one of the strangest things we human beings do is that we become extremely sophisticated in terms of explaining and describing ourselves, which is not expressing what the sun self is, but a version of ourselves, and often a version of ourselves that is now obsolete. Because the thinking process, in order to describe itself, it has to go through the process of recollection. It's defining itself based on its past. And based on that past, it's trying to locate and position itself in the present. So Mercury, the intellect, can continuously narrate a person that doesn't exist anymore. And in that way, Mercury, as a function of the intellect, has the capacity to maintain our identities through language. Because it's Mercury that's constantly making statements like, this is who I am. This is who I've always been. This always happens to me. This has always been my role. This is what people expect of me to do. And if we pay attention, these are repeated statements that we make throughout a lifetime. And because of that repetition, we can come to believe the repetition and its consistency is the continuity of the self. This is the monkey mind at play, right? But when we think about the sun is so much deeper than these stories. It's not about our psychology. It's not about these stories. The sun is the soul, the essence, and the gravitational center. And in reality, it is the sun that should narrate our story of who it is that we are and what we are. So I want us to pay attention to the stories that are emerging and to feel its discrepancy within. Because sometimes we get this like cringe feeling. It's like, I'm describing myself that way, but why am I doing it? Because it's not fully in resonance with the soul of you. This is something to pay attention to right now with Mercury here. And I think the beauty of the conjunction with Jupiter and with the presence of the sun here, we're starting to see this drift. And the minute that we start to see the discrepancy between what we say and how we truly feel internally, we start to see that this story that I've been telling about myself, I've only come to believe it because I've repeated it so much. It's been held together entirely through repetition, through memory, through expectations, what people want from me, the way they praise me, and I bought into it. And when we have this realization, Mercury actually begins to perform its divine duty, which is to be the articulate servant of consciousness. And that's what Mercury's job as the intellect is about. This is why Mercury is never far from the sun. The sun is consciousness. Mercury is the thinking process. Mercury's job is to articulate this for consciousness. And if in this moment we start to listen to the essence of what we're about, and we all have a higher voice, we all have a higher self. I'm using the word essence, but if you go inside of yourself, it's not as abstract as it sounds. And yeah, if we go within right now, we'll see that there's a language that wants to change in terms of how we describe ourselves. This conjunction is telling us this is an opportunity for revision of our old self-identification. This is Mercury right now moving towards the sun, trying to organize a new narrative that represents the sun within us. And when we have that Kazemi, when Mercury is combust in the sign of Virgo, when Mercury has caught up with the sun. We'll talk more about this, what the process has been and how to do this. But I want to explain why I'm framing Mercury right now in this way. And that's because 4 days prior to this conjunction, we had the solar eclipse, total solar eclipse in the sign of Leo, where the sun and the moon, a new moon, comes into relation with Ketu South Node. That's how we get an eclipse. And I want us to understand Ketu has a very particular function. Ketu is about emptying things. Ketu does not have any interest to the surface, superficial, above components of things. Ketu is searching for the essence, what's underneath, beneath, inside. So this Ketu wants to separate consciousness from all of its external bells and whistles of its identifications. This is what the next 18 months in the sign of Leo are about. So it's loosening our identification. Ketu is going to look at us and it's going to be like that meaning of that identity, that part of you has exhausted itself. It cannot exist anymore. It needs to be emptied out. And again, because this is happening in the sign of Leo, the sign that pertains to the self, our identity is connected to it. Ketu can't empty the self, the soul, but all the bells and whistles attached to it, Ketu is very powerful and it can do this. Ketu wants to disconnect us, detach us from those parts of us that have come to believe I'm this type of a person. It wants to disconnect us from the roles that we've just come to perform, the status that we have, the positions that we occupy, the self-image that we've been trying to maintain so that we can position ourselves and have a sense of self in the external world. And Ketu can hurt in the sign of Leo because we want a sense of self-importance. We want authority. But if these things are built and maintained through the bells and whistles of identity, Ketu dissolves them. This eclipse series is going to create a lot of interruption in these kinds of modes and modalities. But I think there's a way to look at Ketu's emptying. Is like the way we start a mantra when we say Om. That's actually emptying a space. In the Vedantic traditions, they call this concept shunya, a space created through emptiness. This is a pause between a formulation of the next identity that cannot resemble the previous. It's like when you inhale and then you exhale. It's like you breathe in, there's this fullness, you hold it, exhale, emptiness. If you pay attention, there's nothingness before another sense of fullness can come in. This is like what Ketu is right now with these eclipses. It's where the old sound is coming to its end. It can't be articulated anymore. So right now, just 4 days after the eclipse, we are in that empty, silent space. It's an interval that something wants to emerge. But I do want to say this. I don't want to romanticize Ketu and this empty, silent space. It's a very painful space for us human beings to be in. It's incredibly uncomfortable. We're not used to such a state because when something happens in our life, when something goes out of it, right away we want to replace it with something. We break one habit, we try to bring another habit. We break up with someone. Instead of giving it a few months, maybe even a few years, we'll get into another relationship. What's that saying? If you want to get over someone, get under someone. It's exactly this. It's saying that a lot of us have a hard time putting up with that empty space. It's very demanding. And that's because we have an intellect, we have a boot, we have a Mercury, right? That wants to constantly think, differentiate, engage, be in relation to something. So our first inclination is, I can't stay with this space. And considering what's at play here is our identity being dissolved, we can feel very tempted that as one old identity is being emptied out, that we start identifying with something new right away. And the process of building an identity is to identify with different components and bring it back to the self, where it's like, that's now my self-identification. So if one role goes away because that was part of the identity, we'll be searching for another one. And I want us to understand why this happened. This is coming from the ego. And if we think about it, the ego doesn't particularly enjoy an empty throne. It wants something to always be sitting there. It wants definition and certainty. It needs to know something so that it can declare itself. And I want us not to shun the ego, because if we don't have an ego, we can't relate with the external world. The ego is the way that it mediates the self so that the self can come and have a connection to the external world. It's making itself an identification cue. It can project that externally, and then the external world validates it, and then it can have an interaction with it. But the ego can be very problematic if we are operating from that premise and we don't understand the function of the ego. And going back to that empty throne is going to be very difficult right now because Ketu is creating that empty space, the eclipses, and it's asking us to hold it. And I think this is where actually Mercury and Jupiter can come to help us. But I want us to be aware because we're using Mercury not to fill it with more noise. The job of Mercury and Jupiter right now is to actually discern and understand what's being removed rather than try to replace it. Because Mercury can decipher and decode that part, and Jupiter can start to reveal its meaning. But we have to hold the space right now. This is about us understanding we don't have to perform certain things anymore. We are actually allowed to live from the heart and the soul of us. So there's an emergence happening here, but it needs time to simmer. And I think having the sun here right now too, it can direct this project of Jupiter and Mercury in terms of understanding what soul essence is. Because if sun was at a blind spot right now to this entire happening, we wouldn't be giving this video this slant, but the sun is in the sign of Leo. So it has a lot to do with understanding what the soul of us is about, what our true expression is about, what's authentic to us. But now I want to bring in another layer, which is that trine to Saturn. And I want to say Saturn's role is really profound right now. Like in the last video, we talked about Saturn's retrograde as suffering, how to suffer in life. And I really wanted to do this video despite my jacked up back right now, because I wanted to bring something positive about this Saturn. We've talked a lot about Saturn in the past year in terms of the hardships that it brings. But Saturn is really helping us in this trine dialogue. Saturn's patiently telling us, slow down, because Saturn governs time. He's the reality principle. And Saturn's time and this notion of reality allows something to become substantial enough. Like a plant, anything, it needs to grow to become substantial and to become strong. And that's what allows us to survive the moment. And I want us to remember the eclipse has created a void, an emptiness, but it's an emptiness where possibility can emerge from it. But I want us to remember that possibilities are always very vulnerable. And that's because when an old structure disappears, countless other things want to rush in to replace it. But there's only one right possibility. Like we can, in this moment, in this empty moment of self-understanding, we have a realization and right away we want to make that an identification cue and self-define through that to build an entire identity around it. Yeah, I want to be that kind of person. Yeah, I am that kind of a person. And if you think about it, we just filled up that space again in no time. And when you think about that, all you did was you just rearranged the old furniture. You didn't redo the entire thing. Saturn is preventing that premature construction. Saturn right now is putting some parameters around what's been emptied out. It's like putting a fence around it and saying, no, not yet. Nothing can go there just yet. And it's a trine, so Saturn's trying to help. And Saturn's very strong right now because in its retrograde motion. You can think about like Saturn as some sort of a bouncer outside of this fence. It's like anything that tries to enter is like, do you belong here? Is this actually necessary? Is this true? What you're bringing in, can it endure? Does this stupid thing that you're bringing in, does this even deserve all the work and the structure that you want to build around it? So Saturn's guarding it right now. Saturn's giving us time. It's giving us the patience, the forbearance to hold the space, to keep it empty for a minute so that Jupiter and Mercury can do their job. And Saturn's also doing this in another way because Saturn's in the sign of Aries and Saturn's debilitated, right? And the sign of Aries is about initiation of action. So if you think about it, Saturn's kind of tying Aries' hands behind its back too, right? You're going to initiate what? I'm here. I'm slowing you down. So the immediacy of action is being meddled with Saturn being here. We're getting hesitation to our impulses. And under ordinary circumstances, this is super frustrating. And I was saying, let's not romanticize Ketu. This can feel frustrating right now too. But this moment of hesitation in reality is about wisdom. Because right now, if we were to act without giving Mercury and Jupiter some time to decipher what is right and what is true, we're just going to recreate the structures and the architecture of the past. We don't want to do that. Ketu is emptying it for a reason. Without Saturn, we could still act out of a place of reflex. We can still choose according to our old fears and inadequacies. We can just replace something because we can't bear this feeling of discontinuity and the emptiness that's coming from it. So Saturn's helping us tolerate these intervals between impulse and action. And with Saturn too, between those intervals is when we can come to have an inclination of this action. Does it have enough integrity? And in some ways, Saturn's testing the authenticity of things and is teaching us what authenticity means right now. Because by creating hesitation, delays, Saturn's telling us if something's coming out of the soul of you and it's your authentic impulse, it's going to survive time. It's going to survive obstacles. No matter what I do to it, I cannot kill that impulse because it's coming from the soul of you. So if I test it once and if it dies, it's not coming from the soul of you. It's your persona, it's your identity, your identification process. So I'm going to test it. And over the months until December 10th, when it comes off of his retrograde, if that impulse still exists in you, trust it. That's coming from the soul of you. It's authentic to you because I couldn't kill it. Because an authentic impulse that's a soul urge doesn't require immediate action to feel true. It doesn't need to be validated. Saturn's saying that if this path that you're choosing, the stuff that you're choosing to bring in, if this realization has true substance, it's going to withstand my examination, my delays, the way that I'm going to frustrate it. Saturn's introducing a lot of resistance right now to the system. And this resistance holding us back, but it's giving us time. It's allowing us, it's pushing us to remain in that empty space. And another thing that Saturn's doing, Saturn represents long time, right? Stretches of time. So Saturn's stretching time right now. So it's taking that mere possibility and allowing it to simmer. And we always need this simmering so that thing becomes part of our character. Because at the earlier part of the video, I was talking about we're supposed to embody what we know. We need time for that. And Saturn's also giving us that. And one of the reasons why this happens is that when we stretch time, we're forced to choose an emergent possibility over and over and over again, especially with Saturn that creates delays. So in some ways, Saturn is familiarizing the ego, the self that needs to express itself with its own true authentic expression. It's like, yes, you have become accustomed to that identification. It needs to empty. You need to try this new one. So I'm dissolving that. All you're left with is this. Keep repeating it. It becomes a conditioning so that we become familiar with it. And we need this repetition because whenever something new comes into our life, we have to learn how to organize our time around it. We have to learn what sacrifices it requires. We have to come to understand its limitations and its horizons because we live in reality. So in many ways, we have to choose it over and over again. And the parts of us that have been atrophied, again, because of socialization, the roles that we played that are actually authentic to us, this is a way of strengthening it, this repetition of Saturn right now, because it's frustrating us. And again, having Mercury here, super important because the intellect, the mind can help us right now articulate this process. This is a way of knowing what's happening to us eventually, which is also very important. And again, Jupiter is recognizing its meaning, why it's significant. And another thing that Saturn's doing in this trine, and so apt at doing because Saturn moves so slow. So this trine will be going on for quite a while until Saturn's out of the sign of Aries in another year. Saturn's like, okay, Jupiter and Mercury are going to start helping you in understanding what you're actually about. But you also need to become strong enough to be able to hold this knowing. So in many ways, Saturn is very much helping the Ketu process in the sign of Leo, that eclipse. It's maintaining the integrity of that space. And this is good because we're becoming more selective about what can enter the space that's being emptied out. We're starting to understand that if the throne is empty, we don't have to fill it with anything or anybody just because it's empty. we're coming to understand not everything deserves to be sitting there. In fact, the only thing that deserves to be sitting there is your soul, not things of the world, not another person. It is the throne of your own soul. But of course, there's another component to this transit, as I mentioned earlier, which is the transit of Venus through the sign of Libra, because Leo and Libra are in sextile to each other. And Venus is coming pretty close to the degrees of Jupiter and Mercury when they're conjunct. So this is a very harmonious connection because it's a sextile. So while Leo's telling us, I want you to discover something authentic about yourself, Libra is introducing another piece of the picture that is just as important, which is Libra saying to Leo, look, I wish you the best. I want you to find your authentic truth. Be your own truth. But that truth doesn't mean you have to lose awareness of other people. And that's because Venus in Libra understands proportion, reciprocity, relationship, beauty. So this connection is a subtle intelligence about how to remain oneself while also remaining very aware of other people, because they have their own souls, they have their own thrones. They are also entitled to their authentic self-expression. And considering right now that Saturn is in opposition to Venus because of that Aries Libra axis, this dynamic from Aries to Libra and from Libra to Leo is teaching us something about becoming more mature, because the immature self in the sign of Leo needs constant confirmation from other people that it exists, that it's important. It needs to enter a room and a mature Leo and dominate the room. It constantly needs to be recognized, praised, and it needs the world to mirror its importance back to it. But an integrated Leo does not need this kind of dramatization, especially when they know who they are and what they're about. And Venus in Libra is teaching right now, understand how to be in another person's light and receive it. And understand that you can still exist without wanting to extinguish their light. This is like one of the craziest things that human beings do. They play a zero-sum game. That's the kind of world that they're in. That for me to be great and for me to be myself, you need to be annihilated. Not understanding that more light just means a space that's more lit. There's something incredibly important in this moment that is so Leo-oriented, that we understand that we can have an authentic self-expression. We can be a true expression of ourselves, but still have the capacity to be in a relational dynamic with others. A self with enough center, with enough confidence that they can meet another center and not lose themselves. This is very important. This is a person who doesn't need to dominate other people. It doesn't need to dissolve other people. And it also doesn't need to dissolve into other people. It doesn't need other people to disappear so that it has a sense of its own existence. This sextile is talking about how we can exist as play, a cooperation between many selves. Expression of consciousness with its many expressions. Like I've said this in other videos, if there's an ultimate consciousness, all of us, as one of its rays, we are just one node in that system. And we're all interconnected in that way. And we got to know how to interact with each other and also understand that nothing's been taken away from us. The grandeur is there. The essence will never be touched. This is Venus right now. And getting some help from Saturn there as an opposition is showing us the harmony and the proportion of reality, which is all of these multiple nodes. And on a more personal level, where two realities can coexist together. So this is another component that's coming in from the sign of Venus. And this is bringing us to the end of our video. And before closing, I would like to ask you to please like, share, and subscribe. And please do comment. I'd love to know how you experience this eclipse, how this unfolding of this empty space is for you. What are you beginning to understand differently about yourself? The kind of story that you've been telling yourself, how do you see it being modified? What identity, roles, performative parts of you are you ready to leave behind? Because this is what Ketu is trying to dissolve. And most importantly, what continues to feel true in you? Even when there's zero recognition from others, when you're sitting in that empty space, that soul urge, that soul declaration is still there, and it doesn't need a confirmation from the world. It can exist on its own. That's telling you something about your essence. Please do let me know about your experiences of this transit. And if you want a reading of this transit, the upcoming transits, or just to understand your birth charts, what it's saying about you, why things have happened the way that they have, and where is it all heading. If you want that reading, you can go to my email in the description box below this video or any video. Or for more information, you can go to my website at parisayazdi.com. There you will also find my email, and when you're ready, I'd be more than pleased to hear from you. And now to close this video. And I would say what makes this transit very profound is the intensity that's behind it. Because if you think about it, we're talking about an event after the eclipse, just 4 days after. It's involving 6 planets in a conversation. We're talking about a retrograde, debilitated planet in this convo, 3 signs in a dialogue, as a trine, sextile, and an opposition. There's a lot happening. It's where a multitude of layers are coming to the surface, but they're all coming towards a coherent narrative. And if we were to give a voice to all of these components, Mercury is saying to us right now, pay attention and understand what's happening. Decipher it, decode it. Jupiter is saying to us, take a moment back, meditate, understand its meaning, its purpose, the higher learning here. And Leo saying, let it cultivate so that you can live the truth that's emerging, the meaning that's emerging. And Saturn saying, slow down and be careful enough so that it can become real. And Venus is saying, live it beautifully enough so that there's room for another person and another soul to come beside you so you can share it with them. And there's no better way of reality testing who you are than when you are in relation to other people. Topic for another day. And I would say from all these disclosure of the planets, this is what wisdom's actually about. It's what wisdom looks like. Because wisdom is not about knowledge or accumulated knowledge. It's not about what you can talk about profoundly. Wisdom is knowledge that now lives in the heart. Knowledge that has the power to alter every single one of our actions and choices. Wisdom changes the way we live inside of ourselves, how we experience and enact ourselves. Wisdom changes the way we love, the way we create, the way we respond, the way we occupy our own life, and the way that we stand at the center of our being. The wisdom is a state of being. That's what I'm trying to say. We don't know wisdom. We live wisdom. It's effortless. It's almost unconscious knowing now. Because knowledge requires enactment. Wisdom is the embodiment of that knowledge. It's what we are. And I would say it's good for us right now to employ some wisdom, not to be specially afraid of that empty space that this eclipse has created, the vacancy, the void. I hope we have enough courage to just sit with it for a moment and not to try to fill it with another role, with another performance. The wisdom to sit with it, which Jupiter is helping us with right now, to listen and to observe, which is Mercury, as well as Mercury giving us the power to find our voice, to find the right words for the self, the essence of the self, so that we know we're actually giving ourselves some space right now, so that we are a greater representation and expression of not just the who I am, but what we're actually made of. And I'll say this again, Leo is a fire sign and it pertains to our Dharma. So it's very important for the self to have an authentic self-expression through understanding what it's made of. That's how it's going to know what its purpose is, what its kingdom is, what is here to rule, and what its real position and role is about. And this brings us to the end of our video. And before closing, I'd like to leave us with a wish. And my wish for us during this transit is that the soul of who we are begins to emerge from the darkness of this eclipse. And I say, may we have the courage to see its truth. And may the wisdom of what we've come to understand guide the life that now takes form around it, so that our knowledge becomes character, our understanding becomes expression, and our truth becomes a life that we're capable of living fully. And that's it for today. Sending you much love. Till next time.